Hello, good morning, and welcome to the very first edition of Live in Your Own Power. So this replaces our Wednesday night, the Wednesday night video I used to do. Now I do Thursday morning at 8:30, and it's called Live in Your Power. What I'm going to talk about today, I think, is really, really important, particularly now that we're going into the holidays. We're in November here, and what I'm going to tell you is what I want to talk to you about is unconditional love. Unconditional love. You know, we all hear about that, and especially if we're church-going people, we hear about unconditional love, and you should love everybody no matter what, and love them unconditionally no matter what they do or how they behave. We need to set that aside, and we need to love them for who they are, to see the good. And, you know, there's a whole bunch of quotes, and in the simplest form, I think, unconditional love has to do with just loving people unconditionally. No special parameters around the fact that we love them. And, you know, I think it's about loving somebody in spite of their imperfections, right? That's what we're taught. That's what we're taught. And that might work fine, except for when we're dealing with abusers, because we can't set aside what they've done to us. We can't set that aside. We can still love them, but that doesn't mean we have to put up with their behavior. And that's what unconditional love means sometimes. Madonna said, to be brave is to love someone unconditionally without expecting anything in return. And that's kind of a good definition for where I'm going. Also, you know, I looked in the Bible. There's a whole bunch of Bible quotes about unconditional love. And the one I like the best is 1 John 4:18. I'm going to read it. It says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment. Has to do with punishment. We all know that. We were all fearful of our abusers because they punished us, didn't they? I know that sometimes my abuser would, he called it freeze me out. He would not talk to me for sometimes 2 or 3 weeks. It was like I didn't exist. No matter what I did, no matter what I said, it wasn't good enough, and he would freeze me out, not talk to me. That's not love. That's fear. That's why I grew up with fear. Now, here's the deal. We can unconditionally love ourselves. Ourselves. That's the hardest part, isn't it? You probably heard me say I took a class. It was by Reverend Chris Chenoweth, and it had to do with prosperity, actually. But part of the lessons were built around forgiveness. And I thought, I don't have anybody to forgive. What am I going to worry about forgiveness for? I've forgiven my ex-husband. I've forgiven everybody who, my parents when I felt like they didn't do the best job they could have done for me. That little centristic thing that we do about our parents. We think that it's all about us, and it's not. It's about them doing the best job they could for us. But anyway, my point is forgiveness. Forgiveness is a big deal. And to unconditionally love ourselves, that means we have to forgive ourselves for some of the things that we've done. And that comes right back to forgiving ourselves for putting up with living in abuse. I had to forgive myself for that because I stayed. I left 3 times. I came back every time. The 4th time I left, I was done. I was gone. But I came back. And statistically, it says that women leave abusers 7 times before they finally leave. Well, I don't like that statistic, and I hope it's not true, but I keep seeing it everywhere. So if you've left and you come back, forgive yourself for that. And now I'm speaking to women who are out of abuse, who have finally left and said, you know what, this is my life. This is my authentic life. Well, building our authentic lives, living in our power, which is what this Thursday morning video is about, living in our power. Guess what? That requires unconditionally loving ourselves. Now, how can we do that? What's a good step to take to do that? Well, number 1 is forgiveness. And you might take a pen and a piece of paper. I like to use spiral notebooks so the papers don't get lost. They don't go other places. But start writing about unconditional love of yourself. What do you have yourself to forgive for? And that's a big step. And don't blow that off because it's really huge. I blew it off for a long time. Now I work on forgiving myself often, very often, sometimes every single day. And that's just part of it because we're human. So Unconditionally love ourselves. That's my challenge. That's my challenge to you for this week. Please do that. Please write down how you're not loving yourself. What about yourself that you don't love, and how do you resolve that? Maybe you feel like you talk too much, or you don't talk enough, or you're not speaking your truth, or you've got the holidays coming up and you're feeling bad about some of the things that you have to do. How do you unconditionally love yourself through all of that? Unconditionally loving others, it's important. And I learned to unconditionally love my parents, even though I didn't think they were the greatest parents in the world. As I grew older and as I became a parent, I understood that parenting is a bitch. Parenting is a hard thing to do. But anyway, I learned to forgive my parents unconditionally. I will not unconditionally forgive or love my abuser. I love him. I care about him. I wish him the best. But what he did to me, the way that I lived, and I stayed for 34 years, as you know, does not mean that it's okay. Does not mean unconditionally loving him does not mean that his behavior toward me for all those years was okay. It's not. That's not what it's about. It's not making things that are bad toward you okay, that hurt you, that emotionally abused and emotionally scarred and bruised you, physically too, or financially. We all go through all that stuff. Unconditional love is about loving people without conditions, without blaming them for things. And I guess I don't blame my abuser. He is who he is, and he's got his own issues. I get that. But the person to truly unconditionally love is you, is me. Love ourselves, because we can't move forward. We can't do anything more if we don't do that. If we don't harbor anger or frustration or guilt toward yourself. Let all that go, because it doesn't really matter. Love yourself. Unconditionally love yourself. And guess what? That is truly living in your power. Living in your power. That's what this video is all about. So hold that in your mind through the rest of the week. Pay attention. Pay attention to when you're not unconditionally loving yourself. It's a huge lesson. It's a huge task, but we can do it. We can do it, and our lives will be so much better. I'm Mickey Zeta, and as you know, I'm morphing my Surviving Abuse Network business into Shatterproof, Thriving After Domestic Abuse. And some areas of my business are already changed. My webpage will change in the next couple of weeks. My webpage, meanwhile, is survivingabusenetwork.com, survivingabusenetwork.com. You can watch live videos there. You can listen to podcasts, lots of podcasts. And I say my podcast is real life stories told by real live women. So if you're looking for some support for yourself as you're creating your authentic life, listen to the podcast. It's still called Surviving Abuse Podcast. That will morph also to Shatterproof, Thriving After Domestic Abuse. But right now it's in the process of changing. So thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. And unconditionally love yourself. Make that the gift to yourself for this week. We all deserve gifts. We all deserve to support ourselves. So choose to do that. We spend so much time supporting other people. Support yourself this week. Make it a habit to unconditionally love yourself. Live in your power. It's a fabulous place to be. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you for watching. I'll be back on Monday morning at 8:30, and we'll be So now instead of Wednesday and Sunday nights, it's going to be Monday morning and Thursday morning at 8:30. We'll be doing the live videos, but they're also recorded, so check them out and leave quotes or leave posts and let me know what you think about this video. What do you think about unconditionally loving yourself? Can you do that? Are you willing to consider that? I hope so, because it's huge. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it, and I will be back, for sure on Monday morning at 8:30, but probably before that too. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Unconditionally love yourself. Live in your power.